My goodness, this roster is stacked, and they look at the running back room, and it's just more of the same, what we see every year. But I'm seeing names in Zamir White, Kenny McIntosh, James Cook on down the line that are not only super talented, but they've been on campus, been in the system for now an extended period of time. So they could really flourish here after having some decent seasons this past year.
Yeah, I mean, you look at this past season, Zamir White and James Cook were, and Kenny McIntosh, for a matter of fact, too, they were really stepping into bigger roles, taking over, and filling the shoes of DeAndre Swift and Brian Herrien, two guys that, kind of handled the running back duties for Georgia the last couple of seasons leading up to 2020. And, White, obviously, incredibly talented, number one running back in his class when he signed in 2018. James Cook was a top 5 running back in that class, too. And both of them kind of started off their college careers slowly. Obviously with White, he tore his ACL his freshman season, missed all of that, and then, was behind several talented backs in 2019. James Cook was kind of used as more of a utility guy, had big numbers receiving, big numbers rushing, and it was kind of a game for these Georgia offensive coordinators of the last couple of seasons to figure out how they were going to use James Cook. You look back at the 2018 season with Jim Chaney as the offensive coordinator. Cook was a freshman. He got utilized a little bit, but not nearly as much as he has under Todd Monken this past season. Same thing with James Coley in 2019. There was a lot of talk that they were going to use the backs out of the backfield a lot more often in the passing game. And it didn't really transpire that way. So, I think you look at James Cook and the production that he had this past season, had 303 yards rushing and also put up some big numbers in the passing game, finishing with 225 yards there. Had a 100-yard game against Alabama in the receiving game. Had another 100-yard game. Believe it was against Kentucky rushing. But I would have to go back and check on that one. So, he got a lot more comfortable under Todd Monken as the offensive coordinator. And then, like you mentioned, down on the line, Kenny McIntosh, Dejean Edwards, Kendall Milton, there's a lot of talent there. And you bring in another talented guy out of IMG, Lavassier Carroll. The guy that I would watch would be Kendall Milton. He was a true freshman this past year, got banged up towards the end of the season against Florida and missed some time, ended up returning for the bowl game. But, obviously was not 100%. He's a guy that reminds me a lot of, maybe Nick Chubb, looking back at some of these Georgia running backs of the past. He runs really, really hard. And another guy that runs really, really hard is Dejean Edwards, who was also a true freshman this past year. Got some carries in some of the later games, looking back at the South Carolina and the Missouri games where Georgia, handedly won those. He got some carries, especially with Milton banged up, and they didn't really want to give a ton of reps to their top guys in White, Cook, and McIntosh. He's a guy that I would watch. And then, I bring up McIntosh there. He really did it all for Georgia. He had some big returns in the return game, showed some ability that he could break some runs. He's another guy that I would watch, that could have a breakout season in his third year with the program. I guess the overall narrative for this running back room would be, like you said, they're talented, they're experienced, and they're dynamic.